Hello, everyone. This is John Weber, President of Software Toolbox. Thank you for attending the June CSIA webinar. Today's topic is hiring. Yes, hiring the people that serve your customers and thereby help or hinder your growth that may make or break your business. It's a topic no one can ignore. Software Toolbox, a CSIA partner member, hosts and sponsors the monthly webinars, helps SIs lower their risk on projects involving software by providing them a unique mix of off-the-shelf software products and rapid response technical support that minimizes the need for custom code and lowers field startup time risk. I would like to introduce today's webinar presenter, Evy Trost of National Engineering Resources. Evy Trost has over 30 years' experience serving the process controls industry. She gained her instrumentation and controls experience while working for two major companies in the industry, Honeywell, Inc. for 8.5 years and Emerson Process Management for 15 years. Throughout her career, recruiting and retention has been a major part of her responsibilities. Without further delay, here's Evy.
Thank you, John, and thanks, everyone. I appreciate the invitation and feel honored to speak to CSIA today about a topic that's key to everyone's business, hiring best practices. I'm going to spend the next 30 to 35 minutes sharing hiring best practices so you can evaluate your own internal processes, and then from there determine if there's improvements that need to be made. There's three key areas that I'm going to be focusing upon today. It's going to be the hiring process, employment branding opportunities as it pertains to the hiring process, and employee retention. Now, I could spend the entire presentation just discussing one area of those three. There's that much information to cover, but the intent today is to cover each topic in a broad stroke. If you'd like further information on any one area, you can speak to me directly, or I can present more information at a later time. So let's go into the presentation, and let's start with the hiring process. And the key thing here is that no matter what business you're in or the size of your business, your success or failure really depends upon the quality of your staff. So when we're discussing the hiring process, it includes everything from the front end, from writing the job description to conducting the interviews to selecting the best candidates. Bear with me a moment here while I get a pointer. Here we go. So when we take a look at the hiring process, it should be well defined. You're going to have different people within your organization that are going to be participating in the process, and everyone should know what their role is going to be within that process. They should understand what the requirements of the job is, and they should understand the process that you're going to be using for the selection process and to make the decision. The other thing is that the process should be sustainable long term. If it's too complicated and nobody understands it, chances are that it's not going to be sustained long term, so keep it simple. It should also be measurable. You know, what metrics are in place to measure how effective it is. You know, some things that you might take a look at from a metrics perspective is from the moment a position is open to the moment that you fill that position, you might be taking a look at the metric associated with the time it takes to fill the position. Another metric might be is, you know, how many offers are being accepted. If you're going through that whole entire process and then you're finding somebody backing out or not accepting your offer or accepting it and then rescinding their acceptance later on in the process, you know, why is that happening? You know, that you might put some metrics in place to determine why that's happening. Let's take a look at the key steps within the hiring process. The first one starts with the business decision, where you determine the need to hire a new employee. There's a need within the organization. The other one might, from there we go into, we're conducting a thorough job analysis, where you're taking a look at in more detail, and we'll be talking about the job analysis a little bit later. And then once you complete a job analysis, then you're taking that information and you're writing a job description based on the analysis. Then you're determining what the appropriate salary for that position is. And as you're going through this process, you might be working very closely with HR to help you within each of these steps. Then you'll need to decide what resources to use to find the candidates. And when I say resources, they could be internal resources as well as external resources. When we take a look at internal resources, it could be your own pool of candidates that you have available that you could take a look at to see if they would meet the demands, the requirements of your position. It could also be the website that you have as candidates apply for postings on your website. Or it could be your own internal employees that you have, any referrals that they might have. When we take a look at external resources, it could be staffing companies like National Engineering Resources. It could be job posting board like Career Builder or Monster, any of those type of resources. From there, you can review applications and resumes, and you're trying to identify the top candidates. And those top candidates then are moving to the interview process. And then the one that is doing the best, obviously you're going to be checking their references, and then the last step is really to hire the best candidate. So kind of in an overview sense, those are the steps within the hiring process. Let's focus a little bit more time to take a look at job analysis. When we take a look at the job analysis, what we're trying to do here is identify and determine in detail the particular duties of a job and the requirements and what the importance of these duties are for that job. So some of the things we'll be taking a look at is the duties and tasks, the environment. When I say environment, it's really the environment the employee is going to be working within, the tools and equipment that they'll need to perform their job, the relationships both internal to the supervisor, manager, as well as other groups, as well as external relationships, with partners or maybe clients, and then requirements. So we're looking at knowledge, skills, and abilities in this section. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about job descriptions. The key thing is to make sure that we're writing and communicating to everybody in the organization that's going to be utilizing these job descriptions. Oftentimes we'll write them, but we fail to communicate and make sure that they're in the hands of the people that have a need for them. So within the job description, we want to describe the major areas of the job or the position. We want to identify the individual tasks that are involved, the methods that will be used to complete those tasks, what the purpose of the position is and the responsibilities associated with it, and relationship to other jobs and what qualifications are needed. The job description should be dynamic. It should be current, and it should be very flexible. It should change within the times. One thing that you want to avoid is having a job description that's so rigid that when you assign a task to an employee, you hear them say, well, that's not within my job description. So keep it flexible, and keep it flexible in the sense that it also encourages employees to grow and learn within their current responsibilities. So now let's go into the interview process, and what I'd like to start off with is discussing some common mistakes companies make within the interview process, and after discussing those, we'll be discussing some key things that we need to do in order to strengthen the interview process. Some of the mistakes we see is that there's no effective hiring process in place or one that's followed, and probably the biggest thing that we see in this area is the absence of a job description right from the start. So a company has in mind that they need this type of position, whether it's a control systems engineer, but there's really no job description available. So we're trying to fill a position without that to go based on. The interview process is too long or too slow. Too long in the sense that it takes too long to get through all the steps, or it's just not moving fast enough. And both are not good, because then you risk losing the interest of the candidate throughout the process. Another thing we see is missing or limited feedback throughout the process, whether that feedback is directly to the candidate as far as, if they're a candidate of interest or not, or if you're working with an agency, providing that feedback to the agency. And again, in the absence of that information, the candidate is thinking, well, this is not going to happen, and then they move on to another opportunity that they're pursuing. I've seen times where that has happened, and the candidate, the company is actually interested in the candidate, but they've gotten so tied up that they were unable to get back and provide the feedback. And by that time, it's too late. The candidate has moved on to other things. Changing job descriptions in midstream. And we see that, especially when there's an absence of job description available right from the start. So as a company is going through the process, they're having the opportunity to speak to a variety of different candidates, and they like a specific candidate's experience, so all of a sudden they start changing the job description. So then you have to kind of take a couple of steps back, and it just it delays the whole process, and it increases your cost because there's more time involved, as well as what is that saying and what is that projecting about your company to the candidate. With everybody's busy schedule, another thing that we see is who's ever participating in the interview process, them not being able to make their time available. So you really want to make sure that you're paying full attention to the candidate that you're interviewing. Another thing that we see is not selling the opportunity to the candidate. This is no different than a sales process. So think of it as a typical sales process within your organization where you're presenting a solution to a client of yours. The same thing occurs with the interview process. You're presenting this opportunity to the candidate. You don't know what candidate you're ultimately going to want, so you want to make sure that you've done a good job promoting your company, this opportunity, so when you extend that offer to the candidate, they are excited about it and they will accept that offer. So again, treat the interview process like you would, no difference than you would the sales process where you're trying to win and retain a client. But in this case, what you're trying to do is hire and retain the best employee. Now let's take a look at what we need to do to conduct a successful interview. First thing is make sure that you prepare in advance for the interview. When you go into the interview, make sure that you've reviewed the job description and the candidate's resume ahead of time. Don't wait until you're in the interview and you're taking the time to read the job description and review the candidate's resume, because, again, you want to make sure that you're starting off on a good foot with the potential candidate. Again, if I relate it back to a sales process, you wouldn't go into the sales process unprepared and taking a look at, review at your notes and what the client's requirements that they had communicated at an earlier date was to you. So the same holds true for the interview process. Make sure that you come with a list of standard questions. You want to make sure that you have a standard questions that you're asking every single employee so that you're being fair and gathering the same type of information from each from each candidate. And a lot of times companies will prepare a form that they'll use that's basically the criteria that they're going to be using within the decision-making process, and then they're putting a priority on what that criteria is going to be against the final decision. And if you're using a standardized employment test, whether it's a technical or it's a psychological test, make sure that you're justifying and presenting the use of that test to the candidate so they know how it fits in within your overall process. Another key step is to collect pertinent information during the interview. You want to take a look at candidates' behavior patterns, what they like, what they dislike, whether you're discussing projects, the type of work. You want to ask questions to gather information about their past performance. And discussing a project, discussing a customer concern and how they handle it, those would be all areas where it allows you to collect this type of information. And then just take notice of the candidate's communications and behavior in general. Another key area is to make sure that you're conducting yourself professionally. Again, the same way that we would within a traditional sales process. You want to make sure that the environment is very business-like. Make sure that you're not bored, you're not coming across as bored or tired, you're professional, that the meeting is structured and you're informing the candidate right from the start what the process is going to be, and make sure that you're giving him further information on the company and the position that they're applying for. Be courteous and respectful. And conduct an interview in a private place. Make sure that you're on time the same way that you're expecting the candidate to be on time. Make your schedule available so you're dedicating the time and energy that you need to do a proper interview. And make sure that you're appreciating the candidate's accomplishments and time. Acknowledge it as you're going through that process. And most of all, make sure that you're not getting into an argument with the candidate or kind of belittling some of their accomplishments. The last step is make sure that you're facilitating open communications. Try to break the ice right from the start and develop rapport with the candidate. Make sure that promote a relaxed environment. Don't get into the mode you're interviewing the candidate, so don't hog up the conversations and spend too much time talking. As a general rule, 20% of the time you should be talking, the other 80% you should be listening to the candidate's answers. And go through and explain the selection process towards the end. This is our process that we're going to use, so that they know what to expect ahead of time. Now I'd like to spend a few minutes on the branding opportunities as it applies to the hiring process. This really is just like a sales process. This is kind of the marketing where it gives you an opportunity to promote and present your company and the position in a positive light so that you could attract potential employees. So the same principles that apply in the sales process of attracting and retaining customers, what we're trying to do here is attract and retain top employees. So what you want to do is you want to build your brand, the strength of your company through the hiring process. And if we take a look at traditional applicant to job opening ratios, for every position that there is available, you can expect 40 to 60 people to apply for it. So only one will get the job, and then the rest will be candidates that have gone through the experience. Some never get to the interview process, but throughout that whole process, the hiring process, you want to make sure that everybody that's exposed to your brand, to your company, is walking away with a very positive experience, that you're presenting a lasting impression that's very good and very strong about your company. Because the candidates that don't make it through, today they're a candidate, but tomorrow they could be talking to other friends of theirs, other coworkers, and are they going to say something positive about your company or something negative? Will those candidates want to apply for opportunities down the road to your company? As well as that person tomorrow could be a potential customer. They could become a hiring manager making decisions within a company that you're trying to break into. So they already have that first impression about you as a company, your company. Is it positive or negative? Because that'll bleed over into whether they want to conduct business with you. Now let's take a look at 3 different common ways that candidates experience your brand. Number one, there's no exposure whatsoever because you failed to communicate to them and you've missed that opportunity. The second way is that the brand suffers because it's been a negative experience for them. So it's going to be a negative reflection of your company. The third way is that the brand is very strong because it's been a very positive experience for them. So it's going to turn out to be a very positive reflection of your company. So those are the 3 different ways. Let's talk a little bit about the phases of brand building. There's going to be multiple touch points within the hiring process. The first and the last impressions that you leave with the candidate are crucial, just the same way as that's the case within the sales process. I have here a typical sales funnel and the different phases of brand building, and I'm going to go into those separately and just go through them pretty quickly. But it's all about the opportunity discovery. That's the way that a potential candidate finds out about a company. Finds out about a job opening within your company. And there's a lot of different ways that they could find out about a job opening, but there's one thing that each one has in common, and that's that job description that they're going to be exposed to. So you want to make sure that within this stage that you're treating that job description like a press release, because that's going to be promoting your brand. The next one is company discovery. A candidate's going to want to, if you've piqued their interest, they're going to want to understand more about your company before applying. So one of the areas that they're probably going to go to is your company website. So you want to highlight within your website the key strengths and attributes about your company. Why is your company such a good place to work for? What's the culture like? What's the relationships with employees that you have? There's some websites that I've seen that are really good. They do a great job of really spending some time and dedicating the effort as far as promoting a positive work environment and trying to attract the best possible talent. The application process is the next one, and this is where a lot of companies might miss the mark. The candidates will apply for a job, but 94% of the time, candidates never receive a yes or no in regards to whether there's interest or not in considering them as a candidate. So you really want to make sure that you're following up and providing closure to the candidate, but use the whole application process, where the candidate is applying, submitting their resume. Use this step to enhance your brand. It should state the importance of the position, selling the position and how it fits in within the overall organization. It could also highlight the company's commitment to locating top performers. It should also, depending upon the questions you're asking within this area, give the candidate an opportunity to differentiate themselves, for them to promote their capabilities and qualifications. The interview process is really a two-way street, and too often we treat this as a one-way street between the interviewer and the candidate. But we really need to look at it as a two-way street, because what's occurring there is the candidate is interviewing the company and determining, is this the type of company I want to be part of, and is this the position that I can excel in? So they're interviewing you, and likewise, of course, you're interviewing them to determine whether they're a right fit for your company and for this position that you're trying to fill. And both of you should approach the interview in the same way. We talked a little bit about in the hiring process, be professional, be on time. The same approach applies to both. But something to keep in mind is that when you're going through the process, the same way in a sales process, you're meeting with a variety of different people, decision makers throughout the process, and you're trying to create a positive impression as you're presenting within that sales process and making sure that the person's more excited as you leave the presentation. The same thing holds true within the interview process. You want to make sure that everybody you meet with is leaving that interview, whether they get the job or not, more excited about your company than when they arrive. You want them to really want that position, so that if they don't get it, man, that was a great company, but too bad I didn't get it. And then they're leaving with a positive impression about your company, and they can, they'll be speaking positive about it. Onboarding is the last section or phase of this, where you're making the decision and bringing somebody on board. The average time to hire a person is about 49.3 days. And as we've discussed the process, it's a detailed process. But from the moment that they accept the job to the time that they actually have their start date, there could be a gap there, a lengthy period of time there. So what you want to make sure that you do within the onboarding process is, from the moment before they start, you don't want them to start having second doubts. Now, bear in mind, their resume is out there, they've been interviewing, so chances are they might get another call about another opportunity, and they might, if they turn lukewarm on your opportunity, they might come back to you and rescind their acceptance of your offer. So you want to make sure that that doesn't occur, and there's a variety of different things that you could do in order to lessen that possibility. One might be is to have the hiring manager call the candidate up a couple of times, depending upon, what the length of time is between their acceptance and their start, and just continue to stress, hey, we're real excited about having you, feed them information about your company, give some giveaways that have your company logo on it, maybe share some press release that was very positive, but continue to maintain that excitement. Now let's take the last few minutes to talk about employee retention, which is one of the primary indicators of the health of your organization. And what I'd like to leave you with is, do you know what your employee turnover is for key positions and what the reasons are why employees leave? If not, this is something that you really should be looking into. Now let's take a look at some of the top reasons why employees decide to leave. And, there's maybe other ones that you could add to this list. But they say that, from different sources that supervisors and managers and companies are some of the primary reasons why employees leave versus, it's not so much the position. So if they have unclear expectations, if there's a lack of feedback regarding how they're doing, or a lack of follow-through on commitment that somebody has made, those are some of the main reasons that employees might decide to leave. Another one is the environment doesn't lend itself to them speaking freely, contributing freely their thoughts and ideas. Or they might feel like they're in a position where their talents are underutilized and they're not growing. Another one is, they start sensing that there's an unfair and biased treatment. Somebody else in another department or somebody that has equal experience as them has an opportunity to take on a special assignment, whereas, they maybe had voiced a interest in doing so and they weren't given that opportunity, whatever the case is. I've seen other cases where there's a business uncertainty. There's talk, especially in this economy, I think this is a big one, where there's talk among the staff as far as how the business is doing. They start seeing somebody being laid off or hours being cut. Without any communication, there's that business uncertainty, so they'll come to their own conclusions. And the better performers, if there is that business uncertainty and no communications, they're going to be the ones that are more apt to leave versus the underperformers. Maybe they see a lack of growth and development opportunities for them. They feel stagnant in the job that they're in. They don't feel like they're growing, whether it's taking on increased responsibility within a project or it's having the ability to apply new technology and learn new skills. Likewise, that feeling of not feeling value, appreciated, or rewarded. I heard this recently as I was talking to a candidate in the sense that he was making an effort to go above and beyond the duties of his job, and he was asked to do provide night shift service support, and he made his time available and made the sacrifice, but, there was never any, hey, thank you, we appreciate that. That was beyond the call of duty as it pertained to him. Maybe it's something, one thing that I've heard too is your candidates are, as you're going through the process, you're promoting the position in the company, and as they go into, they start within your company as an employee, the expectation that they had coming in differs from what it actually is. So you want to make sure that you're communicating to them and discussing with them, making sure that the responsibilities are what they thought it was. Especially in this in this economy, we're seeing these minuscule raises. We'll hear that, minuscule raises or none at all during the last year. But rarely is that a reason for an employee to leave. Usually it has to be linked, it's mostly linked with something else. And then when you have, minimal raises or none at all, that's kind of the frosting on the cake. With employee retention, a lot of managers understand the benefits of retaining key employees, but they really need to take a look at and observe their behavior. Is it promoting employees to stay, or is it encouraging great employees to, to look other places? Okay, now let's take a look at and spend some time on employee retention, some things that we could do to avoid some of those common mistakes. And the first one I can't stress enough, communication. I'm going to say communication, communications, and communications. Communicate the expectations of the individual that they're within their jobs. Communicate the performance of the company. Communicate about their performance and just any communications in general about the business. But that is really key and would greatly address some of those concerns why employees leave. Training is another area. There's a lot of sources for training. With limited budgets, you don't necessarily always have to invest a lot in your budget for training. There is the formal seminars, but there's a lot of online free training that's available. I know as I've gone to different integrators' websites, there's videos available there. When you take a look at some of the larger companies like Emerson Process Management, they've got a lot of excellent videos and training online that you could take a look at specific to applications as well as technology, not specific to their products, but good education material. Or as well as setting somebody up with a mentor, that could train them and they feel like they're growing. Another key thing to put in place to retain your employees is succession planning, and a lot of you have those in place already. If you don't, you might want to take a look at something like that. It's a way for you to identify talented employees within your company and develop a plan that could develop them long-term for increased responsibilities within your company. And if you aren't doing it already, make sure that you're conducting exit interviews with departing employees. It's a great way to gather valuable information that you in turn could use to make process improvements and retain the remaining staff. And it's best done by someone other than the supervisor or manager, HR, or some neutral party. There's an investment you make in the hiring process to ensure that you're attracting and retaining quality employees. I mean, we've discussed a lot of different things today. I would encourage you to review your process and make the necessary changes to increase your success. Because when we look at the cost of a bad hire, stats are anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 times the salary of the job salary is the cost of a bad hire. And that takes under consideration a lot of different variables. The time, the interview time for everybody, the time to train somebody once they're on board, any lost profit margins, placement costs that you might have, and the impact to your business, as they're dealing directly with clients, any business that you could lose, or as well as the impact on the rest of your staff as it requires for you to lay off that person. So how effective is your hiring process, and what does your hiring process say about your company? Are you, we discussed the branding opportunities. Are you projecting the right message and leaving the right message with candidates that come in contact with your hiring process? Thank you all for your time. That concludes my presentation. We're going to enter into the question and answer section right now. John, what questions do we have?
Thanks, Evy. Great presentation. The first question we've had is a couple folks have asked if it would be possible to get your slides for the presentation, not just the recording, but the actual slides.
Yes, and the slides, I understand, are going to be available on CSIA website to be downloaded.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the recording is. I wasn't sure if you were going to be giving them the PowerPoints. If you are, then they'll be on the same page as the recording. I have
if
seen
not,
them do that
get in contact with me, and I will gladly share the slides.
Okay. In terms of your email address that you just want me, would you like me to just go ahead and quickly share with them the email that I have, and I can put it in the chat window for everybody?
Yes, that's great.
Okay. So everybody, I'm going to, in your chat window, send something to all attendees. Email is, and I've copied it here from my Outlook. Okay, it's basically evy.trost@nerinc.com. Okay. What I'm going to do is, for those of you that are on the phones, let me get through the questions that are coming in through the chat panel first, and then I will unmute the phones so those of you that have phoned in can bring up questions. So the first question we've had that's come in on the chat panel is, it says, is the 49.3-day average industry specific or just general? I believe that's where you were talking about the average hiring cycle time.
Yeah, that was just general.
Okay. All righty. The other question is, do you have a good example of a company that has a good, quote-unquote, career website?
I do have a company. I mean, I've seen several that are very good, and actually those are systems integrators. But let me just confirm the name of the website, and I could send that information out separately.
Okay. What will happen is you'll get the copy of the attendees list. So if you would want to send an email to the folks who attended, you can do that.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have presently in the chat and Q&A window, so I'm going to unmute everyone. So those of you that, looks like we have 4 folks called in by phone. Do you have any questions you'd like to pose to Evy? Okay. Alrighty. Not seeing anything else in the chat and the Q&A. So.
Okay. I'd like to say, John, if anybody has any follow-up questions at a later time, feel free to either just contact me through email and just provide me those questions, and I'll be more than happy to discuss, provide you with answers or discuss anything in greater detail.
Okay. And just while we were talking, did have some other things come up here. Another person said they definitely would like to see a listing of examples of good career websites. So I'd say after you dig through those, Evy, just take the list of attendees I send you, and I'd just send an email to everybody. Odds are others are interested as well.
Okay. That's great.
Okay.
I will do that.
Okay. And then from Roxanne, we have a question. Do you have a good list of interview questions?
Yeah, I do have a list of interview questions. You know, you could also tailor them to a job specifically, but I'll send that out as well.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All righty, here's one from Titus. It says, given the 1.5 times cost of a job salary for a bad hire, do you recommend using a recruiter? Is there statistical evidence of a higher success rate?
Well, being a staffing firm myself, you know, there's some bias here, but in regards to when you take a look at conducting the interview, you know, going through the hiring process yourself and doing it all on your own versus using a staffing firm, some of the benefits of a staffing firm is we have a greater experience dealing with a variety of different clients, what's working well for them. You know, a lot of these mistakes that we see is based on our experience as we work with a variety of different clients. So we have the industry experience. We could also share, we gather information and as far as when candidates accept offers from other companies, you know, they might be the same type of jobs within your company. We can provide you that feedback in regards to what the salary ranges are for specific jobs within the marketplace, as well as if you're using a job board or getting applicants through your website, you're inundated. You'll be bombarded with resumes. And really, you should take a look at your core expertise. Are you in the business of finding and recruiting talent, or, you know, is it what your business, the customers that you serve, providing, you know, systems integration? So we could reduce that time, and we don't. What we do is we have our dedicated pool of talent, and we can go through that interview process and find the candidates that are the most suited for your business and most suited for the position that you have available. So when you take a look at the amount of time that it takes to identify and find the candidates, that process is shortened by working with an outside firm.
Good, and I actually have something I'm going to toss in on this. I just also want to let you know we do have some other folks, Robert and Lewis and Craig have put some questions out, so I'll be going to those here in a moment. But I've recently had some experience working with what's called an RPO firm, recruitment process outsourcing, versus a traditional, I don't know if you like the word or not, headhunter, type relationship. And I don't know which type of firm yours is, but my experience was with RPO was we basically were paying them to do a lot of the front-end work and screening, deal with the 700 resumes that came in for one job, and give us a list of A's and B's. They did some testing on our behalf. They handled some of the communication using letters we gave them, so we could focus on, okay, these are our A and B candidates, and go through the rest of the process. Do you have any comments on that versus the traditional, paying a recruiter to fill a job?
Right.
Type of process?
Well, yeah, and that's good. I mean, we could operate in any capacity there, whether it's a contingency or a retained recruiter. It really depends upon how you want to utilize it. But, let's just take the wording that you use, a headhunter. I mean, there's so many differences between recruiters within our marketplace especially. And one of the things that I bring to the party myself, just kind of differentiate in that sense, is that industry experience. And that's real key, is when you take a look at any recruiter that you're utilizing, do they understand your business? Do they have real life experience in dealing with the technology, understanding your business? Because the more experience that they have and the knowledge that they have of your industry, the better and the stronger they're going to be in order to serve and find that candidate that's going to be the right match.
Okay. Moving on to the questions, the next one I think is directly relevant to the idea of working with a staffing firm is what is the cost of placing a new hire as a % of salary? I don't know if that's something you want to answer or that varies so much you take it case by case. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, and if that's an area that somebody's interested in, I would say that contact me directly, because there's a lot of it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, that's been my experience in my career. Is that's hard to wide variance. So just for everybody, I've gone ahead and also put Evy's email up here. I annotated onto the closing slide here, so you can copy that down so you can get in touch with her. Okay, the next question is, what are your thoughts on using the professional testing services for evaluating potential hires? I'm going to also go ahead and toss another one here that's related, and that is, what have you seen used for pre-employment testing in the industry? Evy, please answer that, and if you want, I can perhaps add some value based on what you say, based on our experience here at Software Toolbox.
Right. I won't be able to share specific names of testing, but myself, when I worked for Emerson Process Management, and still today, they have within their process, they have a variety of different tests. Some of those are psychological tests. Hello?
We have somebody who's talking.
Okay. They have psychological tests they go through, as well as technical competency tests that they put in place for different types of positions. So, I mean, the feedback from clients is that it provides very good information. And it's not the main source for making a decision whether it's a yes or no for a candidate, but it's another test point within the information that they gather on a candidate. So a lot of times they're going through the interview process, and there's some red flags that are popping up during the process. They might want to take a look at the results of those tests that they have in place and see if it is in agreement with some of those red flags that have surfaced. And if so, that's the intent of how they use some of this testing.
Yeah, and since I'll follow your lead on not naming specific instruments, but we do use some instruments when we hire, and some look at personality, some look at things that address can they do the job, how will they do the job, will they do the job, in terms of behavioral and aptitude. We found that sometimes in our pre-screening the tests bring up red flags. Perhaps they bring out blind spots where perhaps in a phone interview everyone thought, wow, this candidate's awesome. And then we run the profile and identify some areas that we go, maybe we should dig into this deeper, and at least satisfy ourselves whether or not it's a big risk point. Sometimes it ends up helping us once we do hire somebody, knowing this is where we're going to need to do a little more coaching. And we found that over our 10 years of doing it, that typically where some of the instruments showed areas needed coaching, they were pretty spot on. And the good news is, by being real upfront about it with people and about why we're doing it, candidates, it's worked out well. It's not like there's been any secrets. We let them know why we're doing it. When we onboard somebody, we sit down and go through the details of it with them, and openly have what we call the adult conversations about, this is what we're seeing as strengths and areas where we may need to work more together. And we found that works well. So the point about you saying be sure you tell people why you're doing it is important. We never let it be the only factor. Absolutely not. But we absolutely has found blind spots for us. It's kept us from making bad hires.
Right. And the other thing, just to expound upon that a little bit more, John, is the technical aptitude test. I think more and more companies are putting that in place because there's candidates that interview very well, and their resume looks very solid and strong. So one thing that you want to avoid is, okay, you're thinking that this person has the type of skills that are required on the position, for the position. They come on board, and they just are not as good of a programmer as you thought they were. So what some companies might have them go through is a little exercise to write a program. Okay, here's the scenario, here's the application, write a simple program to do this, and it might be something typical within your company. The other thing that we encourage companies to do is a lot of them have a demo center within their offices. So have them go, so if they're being hired as somebody who does configuration on a DCS system, have them go into the demo center and sit in front of the DCS system and do some configuration. So you're actually evaluating their capabilities, firsthand. And that'll go a long way.
Yeah, along those ways, I was meeting with a CEO coach that I work with recently, and he was pointing out that when you're interviewing, also look at, and this applies to what you just talked about, look at how they answer the question as much as what the answer was. To see, are they answering it too quickly and you kind of go, gee, how rehearsed was that? Or are they really struggling to get the answer? It's real easy to go, well, they did answer it. Yeah, they really struggled to answer it versus someone who took an appropriate amount of time.
One last thing to add to that is, as part of this, if you don't have a test that they take, at a system, don't hesitate to ask them to come to the interview process with samples of their work. This could be specifications that they have written themselves. It could be drawings, samples of drawings, design docs. They could scrub it so all the confidential information is omitted. But anything along those lines, it'll tell you about their technical expertise as well as their communications and written skills.
Yeah, we avoided a bad hire last month for that exact reason. A lot of things looked good, and we got a writing sample, and writing's important. A lot of the folks on our work with us and know that we communicate a lot with email, and we got some writing samples and went, oof, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to get to another question here that's up. Craig says, you said 93% of applicants do not receive a yes or no. How do you respond to all applicants with the number of emailed resumes you receive? Do you suggest auto reply?
Yeah, auto reply is probably the best and fast, the quickest way to do it. Just getting something, even an auto reply goes a long way.
Okay, great. Let me re-unmute the phones. I had muted them while we were talking, just so we didn't have. So if there's anyone on the phone, the lines are now unmuted again. If you have some things you put out there by voice, please feel free to. A lot of good questions. I think your content has absolutely resonated with our membership.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that.
We'll see what they say afterwards, but usually my experience is questions means there's definite interest. So, all right. Well, are there any more questions? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and do the wrap-up. I will remind everyone again that Evy's email is up here, and by all means, if you think of something 5 minutes from now, I'd drop her an email. going to go ahead and take the presenter ball back, and I'm going to start going ahead and making the closing remarks. If I do see other questions pop up, I will make sure we get to them before we shut down and stop the recording. Okay. So thank you to all of our attendees for your participation. My hope is that you got several good ideas you can implement in your hiring practice and that enable you to retain your best employees. Evy, thank you for the contribution of your time and expertise. Your presentation was very insightful. We wish you the best for National Engineering Resources. Thanks again to our host and sponsor, Software Toolbox. Be sure to complete the survey for today's webinar. It will arrive in your email inbox within the hour. The links for how to download the recording and presentation will also be in there. Now, it does take up to 24 hours for those to get posted, but the links are already live. But your feedback is really important for our continuous improvement at CSIA. We practice what we preach in best practices, and we absolutely want your feedback. Next month's webinar is by David Stone of Stone & Company. It will be on July 26th at 11 a.m., and the title is, How Can You Exceed My Expectations If You Don't Know What They Are? David is backed by popular demand after his debut at the April Executive Conference. You'll get communications from CSIA through the same normal channels about that. So in closing, here's a CSIA bullet list for you to consider. Watch for information on the new partner member library to be announced soon. It's for integrators too. Implement CSIA best practices regularly. Work towards CSIA certification if you're not certified already. Follow the conversations in the connected community. It's amazing what you'll learn in just 10 minutes a week. And take a look at the business insurance program if you're not in it now. If you ever have a suggested topic for a webinar, please send it to Bob Lowe, the CSIA Executive Director. Have a productive rest of your week, and thank you again for your joining us today. And I see no more new questions, so let's wrap it up. Evy, I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.